My best friend spread rumors about me behind my back. I stayed quiet for months while the lies kept spreading. Then karma showed up loud and clear for everyone to see. The faint, metallic tang of old coffee grounds still clung to the air in my little shop. Reed's Antiques and Curios, even hours after the last customer had left. It was a smell I usually found comforting, a familiar anchor in the steady rhythm of my life. But that night, it was just suffocating. My hands, usually so steady as I polished a tarnished silver locket, were shaking. My eyes kept darting to my phone, lying face down on the workbench, as if its very presence was a ticking bomb. I couldn't even breathe in that moment. Not really, because just an hour earlier, my entire world, the one I had so carefully constructed over 3 decades, had been shattered by a single chilling whisper. The kind of whisper that rips through your reality and leaves nothing but jagged edges. This isn't just a story about a friend betraying a friend. This is about watching the slow, agonizing death of a sisterhood, the systematic demolition of your reputation, and then, finally, witnessing the universe deliver a kind of cosmic justice so precise, so undeniable, that it left everyone speechless. Let that sink in for a second. Everyone. My life before this tornado hit was pretty unremarkable in the best way possible. I'm Evelyn Reed, Evie to my friends, and I run Reed's Antiques and Curios in the quaint, bustling little town of Willow Creek, just outside of Portland. It's a generational business, started by my grandmother, and I poured my heart into it. My days were a comforting routine of haggling for forgotten treasures at estate sales, carefully restoring a Victorian vanity, or sharing stories with regulars who'd stop by just for a chat and a cup of Mrs. Henderson's famous Earl Grey. My evenings were usually spent with Dan, my incredible partner of 5 years. He's an architect, grounded and kind, and he brought a quiet strength to my life that I cherished. We had our rituals, Friday night pizza and a B-movie, Sunday morning hikes up Oak Haven trails, listening to the crunch of fallen leaves underfoot, the scent of damp earth and pine needles filling the air. Life was good, stable, happy. And at the center of this steady universe beside Dan was Chloe Peterson, my best friend, my sister really, since kindergarten. We met on the playground of Willow Creek Elementary, both covered in mud, arguing over who got to play with the rusty swing set. We grew up together, navigating awkward middle school dances, sharing secrets during late-night sleepovers, surviving terrible first heartbreaks, and dreaming about our futures over lukewarm lattes at the daily grind. Her family ran Peterson's Real Estate, a successful local agency, and Chloe, with her bright, infectious laugh and sharp wit, seemed destined for great things. We were inseparable. We finished each other's sentences, knew each other's deepest fears and most outlandish hopes. I trusted her with everything. And that, I realize now, was my first and most profound mistake. Little did I know, the cracks were already forming beneath that polished surface, invisible to me, but soon to erupt. Looking back, the red flags weren't just flags, they were bright crimson banners waving in a hurricane. But I was so deeply invested in the narrative of our friendship, so caught up in the comfortable familiarity of Chloe and Evie, that I simply refused to see them. This, I've learned, is a classic example of the sunk cost fallacy. When you've poured so much time, energy, and emotion into something, in this case, a 15-year friendship, it becomes incredibly difficult to acknowledge that it might be fundamentally flawed or even damaging. Your brain tells you, but look at everything you've put into it. You can't just walk away now. You cling to the good memories, the shared history, rationalizing away the warning signs because the alternative, admitting your investment was misguided, feels like a monumental loss. The first real tremor, though I dismissed it at the time, happened about 8 months before the bomb dropped. It was my 30th birthday. Dan had planned a surprise dinner at our favorite Italian place, and Chloe was supposed to be in on the surprise, helping him distract me. She called me an hour before. Frantic. Evie, I am so sorry. Marcus just got called in for a huge listing, and he needs me there. You know how he gets. Can we do something tomorrow? Promise I'll make it up to you. Her voice was laced with a sickly sweetness, a performance I recognize now, But then it just sounded like genuine regret. I was disappointed, of course, but told her not to worry. Family first. Chloe, I get it. Later that evening, Sarah, a mutual friend, sent me a text. So glad you had fun with Chloe at the Blue Duck tonight, Evie. Great seeing you guys. My stomach dropped. The Blue Duck Tavern was where Chloe often went with Marcus's business associates, but Sarah's text implied I was with Chloe. I dismissed it as a misunderstanding, but the seed of unease was planted. The air around me was slowly, imperceptibly turning toxic, and I was too close to notice the poison I was breathing. Another incident. Chloe started making little digs disguised as humor about my shop. We were having coffee at the Daily Grind, the familiar scent of dark roast and stale muffins filling the air. She stirred her latte, glancing around with a smirk. "Oh, your little antique shop, how quaint. Still selling dust bunnies and grandma's old teacups," she'd say, her eyes twinkling. I'd laugh it off, a forced, uncomfortable sound, but it stung. My business was my passion, my legacy. Then she'd immediately pivot, squeezing my arm and saying, "Oh, you know." "What? I'm just kidding, sweetie. I love that you're living your dream. It's just so different from the real world. You know." This push-pull, this undermining disguised as affection, was her signature move. Then came the subtle undermining of Dan. We were at Chloe and Marcus's annual summer barbecue, the smell of sizzling burgers and freshly mown grass, heavy in the humid air. Chloe cornered me by the patio, a glass of rosé in her hand. "So, Evie," she began, her voice a little too casual, "Dan seems content, doesn't he? I mean, he's a great guy, really. But for someone with his potential, an architect, shouldn't he be aiming for the big city, huge projects? Willow Creek is lovely, but it's not exactly a springboard, is it?" I felt a cold knot in my stomach. She knew how happy Dan was here, how much he valued community and working on local projects that truly made a difference. Her words were designed to plant a seed of doubt, to make me question his ambition and, by extension, our future. I bristled. "Dan loves his work here, Chloe. He's building something meaningful." She just shrugged. "Of course, sweetie." Just wondering aloud. It was always just wondering aloud, or just kidding. The casual dismissal, the veiled criticism, followed by feigned innocence. This insidious pattern is a hallmark of gaslighting. It's not always about outright lying, but about subtly manipulating your perception of reality, making you doubt your own memories, judgments, and sanity. It's designed to disorient you, to make you question your instincts, leaving you more dependent on the manipulator's version of truth. And I, like so many others, fell for it, at least for a while. The whispers grew louder. Though I still hadn't connected them to Chloe, I started noticing people being off. Mutual acquaintances would avoid eye contact or offer strangely sympathetic looks. Liam O'Malley, a guy I'd known since high school who frequented the Blue Duck, seemed particularly awkward. One Tuesday, I ran into him picking up a six-pack at the corner store. "Hey, Evie," he mumbled, looking at his feet. "Everything all right with you and Dan?" I was taken aback. "Yeah, why?" He just shrugged. "No reason, just heard some stuff." He wouldn't elaborate. "People talk, you know," he said, before practically fleeing the aisle. I spent the next hour replaying the conversation, a chill snaking down my spine. Heard what stuff? About Dan and me? My mind raced, but I couldn't grasp what was happening. It felt like walking through a mist, seeing vague shapes but unable to make out the details. Then came the email. It wasn't direct, but it hit harder than any spoken word. It was an anonymous message, forwarded to me by a friend of a friend who had seen it circulating in a local community group chat. The subject line was simply, "Beware of Reed's Antiques." The content was a vile, fabricated smear about me, accusing me of unethical business practices, selling fake items, shortchanging customers, and even worse, implying I was having an affair with a married supplier, and that Dan was oblivious. It painted me as a manipulative, opportunistic shrew, preying on trusting people and a naive partner. My stomach churned. The details were just specific enough, just twisted enough from actual facts about my suppliers to sound plausible to anyone who didn't know me well. The email concluded with a line that still makes my blood run cold. "Just goes to show you can't trust anyone, especially the ones who seem sweetest. That night, the carefully constructed edifice of my trust came crashing down, not with a bang, but with the quiet, chilling whisper of a betrayed secret. I sat at my kitchen table, the glowing screen of my laptop illuminating the horror on my face. Dan, hearing my choked sob, rushed in. He read the email, his face hardening with each line. His first instinct was to call the police, but I shook my head, tears streaming. Who would do this? I whispered, my voice barely a thread. Who hates me this much? And then, like a lightning bolt, it hit me. All the little digs, the forgetting, the gaslighting, the subtle manipulations, the way Chloe had always seemed to know just enough about my life, my insecurities, my business dealings, to craft such a convincing lie. The phrase just goes to show you can't trust anyone, especially the ones who seem sweetest, echoed in my mind, a perverse echo of one of Chloe's own cynical adages. The suspicion, once a tiny spark, became an inferno. It had to be her. I knew it in my bones, but knowing it and proving it were two very different things. And that, my friends, is where the investigation began. I wasn't just going to let this sit. This wasn't just about hurt feelings. This was an attack on my livelihood, my reputation, my relationship. I transformed from a grieving friend into an investigative narrative architect myself, meticulously piecing together the timeline, re-evaluating every interaction. What I uncovered was far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. A web of deceit spun with malicious intent, and I was caught right in its center. My first step was to talk to Sarah again, the mutual friend who had mistakenly texted me about Chloe's birthday lie. I met her at the daily grind, the clatter of ceramic mugs and the hiss of the espresso machine, a frantic soundtrack to my anxiety. I showed her the anonymous email, my hands shaking as I held out my phone. She read it, her face draining of color. Evie, this is insane. Who would write something like this? I took a deep breath. Sarah, I think it's Chloe. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Chloe, no. Never. She's your best friend. Here's the thing about people like Chloe. People with underlying narcissistic personality traits. They are masters of creating a public persona that is charming, generous, and trustworthy. They carefully curate their image, making it incredibly difficult for others to believe they could be capable of such malice. Their lack of empathy, grandiosity, and constant need for admiration drive them to protect this image at all costs, often by tearing down anyone who might outshine them or expose their true nature. Sarah, like so many others, had fallen for the facade. I pressed on, calmly, laying out the timeline of strange occurrences, the birthday lie, the petty digs. Sarah looked increasingly uncomfortable. Well, she admitted hesitantly, Chloe has been saying some odd things lately, like about Dan. She said he was pressuring you to sell the shop and move to the city, even though you hated the idea. Said he was really controlling. My blood ran cold. Dan controlling? That was a complete inversion of reality. He was my biggest cheerleader, always encouraging me to follow my passions. This was classic gaslighting. Not directly to me, but to others, poisoning their perceptio. Enough my life. I also revisited Liam. This time I was direct. Liam, what exactly did you hear some stuff about? He looked visibly nervous, glancing around the bar. Look, Evie, I don't want to get involved, but Chloe, she's been talking. A lot. She was telling people that your antique business was a front for some sketchy dealings and that you were taking advantage of elderly clients. She also said, she said you were a flake, unreliable, and that Dan was probably just waiting for you to get your act together. The words hit me like physical blows. Each lie was carefully crafted to undermine my core identity, my integrity as a businesswoman, my reliability as a friend, and my worth as a partner. It wasn't just a rumor, it was a character assassination campaign. Dan, in the meantime, had been my rock. He helped me scour through my old emails, social media comments, anything that might contain a clue. We found a few instances where Chloe had commented on my business post, subtly inserting passive-aggressive remarks that, in hindsight, seemed to validate the anonymous email's claims. For example, a picture of a newly restored dresser she commented, "Looks good. Evie, hope you got all the authenticity checks done on that one." At the time, I thought she was just being herself. Now it was clear she was planting seeds of doubt. The real breakthrough came from a deleted message. Dan, being tech-savvy, managed to recover some old texts from Chloe's conversations with Sarah on Sarah's old phone. Sarah, feeling terrible, had reluctantly given us access. What we found was damning. Chloe had been actively orchestrating the smear campaign. There were texts detailing instructions on what to say, how to spread the rumors subtly, and how to create the anonymous email. One message in particular stood out, a chilling instruction from Chloe to Sarah. Make sure they fet. Ink Evie's the one losing it. Say she's stressed and overwhelmed. That'll explain why she's acting weird when she finds out. Classic gaslighting technique, right? It wasn't just gaslighting me, but gaslighting everyone else into believing I was the problem if I reacted negatively to the rumors. The revelation of Chloe's calculated malice was a profound shock. Despite all the red flags, despite the growing suspicion, part of me still couldn't fully reconcile the viciousness with the sister I thought I knew. This internal conflict, the struggle to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously, Chloe is my best friend, and Chloe's actively destroying my life, plunged me into a deep state of cognitive dissonance. It's incredibly disorienting. Your mind desperately trying to find a way to resolve the conflict, often by rationalizing the bad behavior or minimizing the impact. But the evidence was undeniable. Armed with this proof, Dan and I decided it was time for a confrontation, not just with Chloe, but with the entire community that had been manipulated. We couldn't let her continue to spin her web of lies. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about setting the record straight, and about protecting others from her destructive influence. What I uncovered was far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. A web of deceit spun with malicious intent, and I was caught right in its center. The fallout was immediate and brutal, but not in the way Chloe had intended. We didn't confront her privately. We chose a public setting, a town hall meeting that was ostensibly about local business development, but which became, in essence, an impromptu trial. I walked in with Dan, the recovered text on my tablet, a printout of the anonymous email, and a carefully compiled list of dates and incidents. Chloe was there, of course, looking impeccably dressed, chatting animatedly with the mayor. She saw me, her smile faltering for just a second before she regained her composure, offering a saccharine wave. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't mince words. I started by thanking everyone for their support of Reed's Antiques and Curios, and then, my voice shaking but clear, I addressed the elephant in the room. For the past few months, I began, the microphone amplifying every tremor. There have been rumors circulating about me, my business, and my personal life. Vile, fabricated lies designed to destroy my reputation. I paused, letting the murmurs spread through the room, and today, I'm here to show you who was behind them. I projected the anonymous email onto the screen behind me. Then, the recovered text messages scrolling through the damning conversations between Chloe and Sarah. You could hear a pin drop. Chloe's face went from pale to beet red, then ashen. Marcus, her husband, looked utterly bewildered, then furious. As I read Chloe's own words aloud, including her explicit instructions on gaslighting, the collective gasp from the audience was palpable. I explained the confirmation bias that allowed her lies to spread so effectively, how she preyed on people's natural tendency to seek out information that confirms their existing beliefs or suspicions, no matter how small, turning innocent comments into malicious facts. The room erupted. People started whispering, pointing at Chloe. Some of the mutual friends who had been hesitant to believe me now looked horrified. Chloe tried to interrupt. Evie, what is this? You're making things up. This is insane. Her voice was shrill, desperate, but her performance fell flat. There was no denying the evidence on the screen, her own words staring back at her, condemning her. And that, my friends, was when karma showed up. Loud and clear for everyone to see. The meeting devolved into chaos. The mayor, mortified, quickly adjourned it. But the damage was done. The truth finally had its day. Within days, Peterson's real estate faced a massive backlash. Clients, especially the elderly ones Chloe had been accused of slandering me about, pulled their listings. reputable local businesses canceled their partnerships. The community, once charmed by Chloe, turned on her with a vengeance. They saw through her carefully constructed facade, recognizing the calculating, manipulative individual beneath. Marcus, understandably, was devastated. Their marriage, already strained by Chloe's self-centeredness, didn't survive the scandal. He filed for divorce, citing emotional distress and the public humiliation. Chloe lost her standing in the community, her professional reputation, and her marriage. She became, almost overnight, an outcast. She eventually sold her share of the family business and moved out of Willow Creek, unable to face the town she had so skillfully deceived. My business, Reed's Antiques and Curios, received an outpouring of support. People rallied around me, not just as customers, but as friends. It was a testament to the fact that while a single malicious person can try to tear you down, a strong community can lift you back up. But the emotional scars, those ran deep. The grief of losing a 15-year friendship, even one that turned out to be toxic, was immense. It was like mourning someone who was still alive, but utterly unrecognizable. I spent months in therapy, processing the betrayal, the anger, the profound sense of disillusionment. I had to learn to trust my own judgment again, to unlearn the subtle ways Chloe had made me doubt myself. The lingering effects of her gaslighting and manipulative behavior created a kind of trauma bonding in reverse, a deep-seated difficulty in forming C. Loose attachments born from the pain of extreme betrayal, rather than abuse affection cycles, but equally isolating. I found myself instinctively holding back, wary of any new closeness, terrified of another knife in the back. Even today, the faint smell of old coffee grounds can sometimes transport me back to that suffocating night. The sound of a specific floorboard creaking in my shop, the one near the front door that always announced a customer, used to make my heart race with anxiety, wondering if it was another whisper, another lie. But with time and with Dan's unwavering love, those anxieties have faded. I've learned that trust is a fragile, precious thing, and some bonds, no matter how long-standing, are meant to be broken when they become destructive. The final act unfolded not in a quiet whisper, but with a roar that echoed through our small town, and the truth finally had its day. I still have bad days where the shadow of her betrayal falls over me, but mostly I'm okay. More than okay, actually. I'm stronger, and I'm free.